Testing? Right. Test. Yeah. Good morning. I think we can start, right? It's 9 o'clock. Is it too loud? Is it okay? Good. All right. So, welcome to the last day of this conference and the first session of the day, DSC resource creation and debugging. I'm Ben Gelens. I'm a CDM MVP, used to be PowerShell. Work as a consultant for innovative or innovative, just depending on where you are. I'm active in the community, in Twitter, GitHub, PowerShell magazine. I write for AzureStack.eu, a couple of blogs, but once that goes rolling, there will be more. Quick overlook at the agenda. We're given a little overview on the DSC resource creation side of things. How many of you already created resources? Okay, so this will be an overview, how the modules are structured, how they are built up, so we can have a better view on the basics, and then we can go deep into the debugging stuff. So first off, we have script-based modules. Those have been around since WMF4, and with WMF5, we now also have class-based modules. And the rest is only code. So I hope you're awake, and we'll dive in. So what you see here is the structure for a script-based DSC resource module. It is located in the program files Windows PowerShell modules directory. It has to be there, otherwise the local configuration manager, morning, is not able to find it, right? So don't put this into your home folders, because the LCM won't be able to pick this up. What you see here is the module directory, which is the module name. And nowadays it's followed with a module version as well, if it is installed by the package management stuff. So we have a manifest, and inside of the manifest we have a key for the DSC resources to export, which is an additional thing you need to set if you are writing DSC resources modules. We have the DSC resource directory, which is mandatory, and this directory contains all the DSC resources. And the name of this directory is the full name of the resource. It's not the name you write in your configuration. Inside of the resource, we have the resource code as a PowerShell module file, and we have the schema.math. So how the schema looks like, it's up next. What you see here is a real basic schema, and what's good to know here is that we have the class demo. That is the full name in this case. It's nothing different from the friendly name, but normally the friendly name is what you would type in your configuration. What you can see here is where I have a key property. And the key property is mandatory when you write DSC resources, because it will govern that one unique resource you are configuring. Then we have the PSM1 content, and it basically exists out of three functions. We have a get target resource, a test target resource, and a set target resource. Where test target resource is the function that is investigating if the resource currently it's checking is in the desired state or not. So it's only returning a Boolean. So if it's true, then set target resource is never called. If it's false, we switch to set target resource. What's good to know is that these functions, they don't share state. So don't use any global variables. Don't expect them to be able to exchange data that way. They all run in their own little island. So it's, if you need to write code that's used by all of those functions, it's best to put them into helper functions. And we have, finally, we have the get target resource, which is basically used for reporting purposes mostly. New in WMF5, we now have class-based resources, and as you can see, the module structure has been simplified drastically. Still, we have the module directory and the version directory put in by the package management. We still have a manifest, and we have a PSM1 file, so a module file. No more directory structure there, so it's all very simplified. But it's WMF5 plus only. So if you're planning to target WMF4 systems, don't use this. My advice will be to, if technology is 2016 plus, like Server 2016 introduced, then default go by class. If it's something that's already out there for a long time, maybe it's a good idea to think about if you need WMF4 compatibility. But since WMF5 is backported a whole way back, so 2008 R2, I believe, well, you should consider writing classes first, always. So how does a class look like? We have the class name decorated by the DSC resource attribute. And again, we have a parameter here decorated as DSC property. We need a key, it's mandatory, there's always a key. And we have, instead of functions, we have methods. So we have a get method, a set method, and a test method. And now it's demo time. So what you see here, of course, is a nano server. There's no interactive capability for me now. If I want to do something with DSC on this server box, I need to do it remotely, so that's what I'm going to do. You saw the script-based module. It's a complex directory and file structure. Luckily, Microsoft provided a resource designer module for us to make this whole process a bit easier. And you can download it from the PS Gallery or find it online somewhere. As you can see, I have 2 versions installed. I believe the 1.8 is the latest one, but not really sure. It comes with a couple of functions. And most of these functions we will see during these demos. For example, the new XDSC resource will be responsible for creating the entire script-based module structure. So what we're going to do now is we will create a DSC resource module, which is named psconf.eu._SMB share. And we put it directly into this local PowerShell modules path. We give it the DSC resource properties. So those will be the parameters, right? We add in a property for ensure. So we ensure a state to be present or absent. And we use a validate set for that. So it's basically just the same thing as you would do writing a function. And we have a path, a name, a full access, and you can see the types here. So luckily, the DSC resource designer provides us with some intelligence to know which types are available to us, because not every type is available for DSC resources. So, Iman.
Why do you write your properties like you've written in line 8, 9, 10, and 11? What's the benefit?
9, 10, 11. You mean like an array?
Yeah. In here, instead of defining it as a variable, there's some value add here.
Well, it's to shorten up the demo code, right?
No, it's basically, so one point is the line 8, 9, 10, 11, you could have defined a variable above and do it and then pass that collection of variables. But once you do it, it's very easy to add a new property without changing too much code. You just change one additional line, and when you do a diff between 2 versions and stuff, it's very easy.
Okay, thanks. Well, it makes sense to me, so that's why I did it. Anyway, let's create that module. So this module is not available yet. We now create it. So all the dirty work is done by this module designer, by the resource designer. We have a look at the schema file, the schema mof file, and the psm1 file. We can now see those DSC resource properties. They are put into that schema mof by this designer. So if you would write this by hand, you probably will make a mistake. So it's a good idea to use it if you're writing script-based resources. Funny thing though is if you want to contribute this kind of script-based resource produced by the resource designer, you need to be sure that you handle the encoding correctly, because the designer doesn't produce the encoding required by GitHub. So maybe that's a point for you, Hima. So, thank you. I did. Okay. And what you see here as well are those get, set, and test target resource, and we export them as well. So, are there any questions? I thought I saw some hands. Nope. Okay. So, the DSC resource designer also comes with some extra functions to help us test out the resources we already produced. For example, if we now test the resource in question we just created, it will validate just fine. But if I go in here, and for example in the test function, I change one of the parameter types to integer, I run it again, it will flag it as being in a state which is not usable to us. So, and it will actually tell us, we should have identical parameters between test and set. So this is a requirement. And it also says we have a different type. So it's actually pretty good in finding the mistakes here. Let's restore that. And check again. And it's all good again. We can also test out the schema. So if we change, let's first test it out while it's correct. So it's all fine. And if we change the key here, let's remove it and make it required, for example. and test it again, it will complain that at least one property must have the key qualifier. So this is a good validation as well. So if you're into writing all that code and you're on a roll and making a mistake, these are the first functions to go and look at to validate if the basics are correct. So now I will update the test target resource function so we can move along to the next demo.
Which function was it you modified?
The test target resource function, yeah. All right, so there are different ways of invoking your resource you're developing. One of those ways is using invoke DSC resource. The invoke DSC resource is a commandlet created firstly for third-party products like Chef and Puppet. So those kind of products will run an agent on the box, and they will use this invoke DSC resource under the covers to actually talk to the local configuration manager, produce a MOV file in memory, and present it to the LCM to do the desired function. So what we can do is we can use that ourselves as well. So I create here a little hash table using the 3 required parameters I need to use with my resource. And I'm going to target my invoke DSC resource against my resource with the test method, or a test target resource in this case. So if I run it now, hopefully it works, or the rest of the demos are screwed also. No, it's fine, okay. So the desired state is true, and that's absolutely correct because that's the thing I put out. So why I did this is because I'm only doing my test target resource testing right now, and if I would have set it to false and I really create a configuration, it would immediately go over to the set functionality, which is not in place yet. So it's a bit of a timing thing. One thing the LCM does for us to speed up things is it does some caching. I'm putting in an extra verbose statement here and running that invoke DSC resource again. And as you can see, we still have the NT authority system. So this is the verbose output created by the whoami.exe. And we have the true statement, but not the do you see me yet. So if you're debugging and starting creating your resources, there's something you should know is that the local configuration manager can be put in a special debug mode, where it forcefully re-imports the modules every time it does a consistency run, or it's invoked. And to do that, we have this special configuration decorated with a DC local configuration manager attribute. And let's run that now. So we produce a metamov, and we give that to our LCM. And let's invoke that again and see if the see me yet is there. So now it's there. So it's really good to know this. I've been in a couple situations where I didn't know this up front, and it really bit me in the butt. So, all right. So another way of debugging is actually importing that PSM1 file into your own session, and that's what I'm going to demo now. So again, we have a hash table of those required parameters, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to enumerate the PSM1 files in the directory and just import it like that. So we have the get, set, and test target resource imported into our current session. And let's run the test target resource directly now. So you can see again the see me yet, so that's running fine. But what's also good to know is it's running in your context, so it's running as you. Normally the LCM will run as local system. So if it's a good idea to test it this way, I don't really know, but it's a good way to do unit testing, for example. So if you're running writing pester test with your module, this would be the way to do the mocking and the assert calling and stuff like that. Hey, man.
So you said, I don't know if it's a good way to run or debug this way or not.
Yeah.
The answer is maybe, because you can debug a lot of things when you run in your own context by yourself, but DSC engine will never run in your context. Mostly it will never run.
Yeah.
So you should, once you are confident that you've ironed out all the issues, then just go back to the invoke DSC resource method, because then you're making sure your code is running in the same context that the DSC engine will run.
So for the sake of recording, Himan just pointed out it's always a good idea to do any kind of runs, right? Just be sure to be really verbose. If you're not really verbose, then there's no use, right? So we move ahead. So fix that bug. All right, so what I'm going to do now is create a little small configuration and apply it to the system. And so we will handle the stuff through the LCM. This will be kind of the integration test. So now the local configuration manager has a current configuration, and it will just run my resource. And because the test function is still outputting true by default, there's no logic in there. It will never call set. So it's skipping set, as you can see here. So what we're going to do now is the same thing, but remotely. And we need to do it remotely because the target server is Nano server. There's no way to do it on there, except for using sim sessions and using PowerShell remoting. So because these two servers are workstation or workgroup based, they don't trust each other. So I have to put in the IP address, because I'm doing all the stuff over IP address, inside of the trusted host of the WSMan configuration. I'm going to load my credential and set up those sessions. So I created a sim session and I created the PowerShell session. And the reason I did both is because I'm going to do some remote editing as well as invoking the LCM remotely. So I'm going to create a configuration for that LCM on that Nano node to also force the module import. So the same thing applies here. And set it remotely. And now we can see we have the debug mode in force module import. Now we're going to copy that module we just created over, and we're going to copy it over the PowerShell session. So we do the toSession method here. Next, let's create that configuration and apply it to it. So, oh, we have a bug already. So what can we see here? Okay, it threw one or more non-terminating errors running test target resource. And why is that? Sorry? I'll show you what's happening. So let's enter the PS session and do some remote editing. So we now have the remote file here, as you can see. So the file is located on the Nano server, and because we're in a PS session, we can edit it in our local ISE, which is really awesome. And the thing that's going wrong here is that the who am I is not available on Nano server. So let's take that out and close this up. Exit the PS session and run it again. And now it runs correctly. So when you're targeting Nano server with your resources, be sure to check out if everything is available to you. Maybe you should create your resources on Nano server first and then port them over to core. That will be probably a bit easier. So right now what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to populate the entire code base just to save a lot of time. I'm not such a good typist, so I'm copying in this entire code piece. Save it, and we will look at it later. Okay, so eventually this resource will be used to create a file share and to govern that file share to be always into the desired state, right? But for a file share to be created, a directory already must be present, or else we would have our first bug as being the directory not being present. So I'm updating my configuration to also create that directory, creating the mob file and sending it over to the Nano server. Oh, again we have a bug. So let's move to demo 7. So we can do start DSC configuration remotely to trigger bugs. We can do the invoke DSC resource on the box, because that's the invoke DSC resource doesn't have any remoting capabilities, because of course it's meant to be called by an agent running on the box. And we have something new in WMF5 called Enable DSC Debug, and it has a break all switch. Let's apply that break all switch to that remote node, and let's try and trigger that bug and see what happens. So actually the local configuration manager is now, because it's now in a break all mode, it's now waiting for us to connect to it. And it's producing this output for us to make it really easy to enter the session. So how many of you saw the session Bruce did? So, okay. What we can do is we can enter let's copy this over first. Zoom it a bit, I guess. Also the credentials. What's this one? Too many files. This is fine. So what we can do is we can enter in a remote session. And from that session, we can actually enumerate the applications hosting PowerShell. And then we can enter in the run space, and we can start debugging that run space. So if the application in question supports debugging, and it has facilitated that, and in this case, the local configuration manager has done that for us because we've put it into debug break all mode, we can enter that of course it's IP. We can enter that session, then we can enter that host process. So the LCM already gave us in the verbose output all the required commandlets and IDs and stuff to start doing this. And as you can see right now, what actually happened is that PSM1 file is opened for us remotely, and the LCM is waiting for us to do the debugging steps. Cool. This is cool, yeah, definitely. So we have basic debugger functionality. Of all the basic debugger functionality, you can just look it up by hitting the question mark. If you prefer to be GUI clicker, then you can go in the debug things here. Yeah. So I don't know. I normally prefer to just put in S. So now we step in, which means we go to the next line. And you don't have to put in S every time. If you want to do a step in, you just press enter, 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 and it goes on. And the cool things here is, for example, we can hover our mouse cursor over the variables and see what is the values. So we can see the first bug already appearing here. We use the share name here, but we have a name parameter. So we have a null value here, and that's why we had that bug just earlier. So we can just step through again. And the cool part now is that because I'm using a commandlet from another module, it will actually hop over to that other module, so you can debug that as well. But I'm thinking Microsoft did a pretty good job on the SMB module, so I'm going to skip over debugging their resource, or their modules, hit O, and move back to my own code. So I think Himman did a good job on the SMB module, right? So we can see that share is still null. So if share, it will evaluate false, and there we have, we cannot validate argument or parameter name, and that's because the share name doesn't had any input because we didn't have a parameter for share name. So this is how we can step through our code and find these kind of mistakes and debug them quickly. It will run the rest of the code, but because we have a terminating exception, it will never call set, right? Am I right, Himman?
Yes.
Okay. This is something not really clearly documented, I think. Maybe we should fix that as well. Okay. And we can fix that ourselves, of course, nowadays. So let's edit that file remotely again. So we're in the test target Now, test target resource code, and we've seen that, well, share should be actually, or share name should be actually name. So now that bug would be fixed. Let's try it again. Exit the session, and start the configuration again. So again, the LCM will provide us with all the details we need to start that debugging session. Let's close these out, replay it. Oh, right, I need to get out of it first. So we enter the host process 1616 and we will debug run space 17. And again, the LCM is waiting for us at the test target resource. So let's step in again. We can now see our name actually has something in there, so it has the myshare string. And again, we will not debug the Microsoft module. And now I clicked away my remote file, so this is not good.
Can you open it from there?
It reopens it, so this is new for me. So awesome job. All right, so get SMB share, actually, it also generated a terminating exception. So again, set will never be called, although we tested our desired state to be false. So we have to deal with that as well. So it will run the logic correctly, but because we had a terminating exception, the LCM will just stop there. So how do we fix that? Let's enter that PS session again and edit that file. And we do good old error action, silently continue. Save it, and we fix that bug as well. Let's see if we can get a little bit further. So again, we are hitting the test target resource here, going through the share, not debugging the SMB module, and now no terminating exception. So when we pass through the logic now, you can see, okay, is ensure present? It should be. Okay, the share should be present. So this is the verbose streams. This is for the user to consume, right?
Can you step with F10 here?
Let me check. Yeah. So you can step over with F10 and step in with F11. I don't know if it's the same key binding as Visual Studio. Okay, awesome. So the share is not present, so we will return false. So our logic now is solid. And now the LCM will actually trigger the set target resource. So before you could see that that was the end of the debug session, so that would also be the end of the LCM invoking your resource and trying to handle your desired state. So now we are in set. You will actually see it creating that share, because there's no more bugs in that code. I know because I wrote it and tested it. So let's skip over that. So let's validate for a bit. Let's see if we got a share on that nano box. And we have. We have the myshare. It has the built-in administrators as full access control on there. So all is in the desired state. Now, if we're going to manipulate the state on that SMB share, we want, of course, our DSC resource to reset the desired state to what we dictated into that MOV file. So yes, we're sure we want to perform the modify action. Let's look at the results. So, okay, you can now see that also the users, the built-in users, have the full access right. So let's trigger the LCM again and see if it fixes this inconsistency. So, anybody else hearing that feedback? Yes. It's annoying, right? Can we do something about the feedback? It's generating a lot of noise. So again, I will enter the debugger, step into my function. It will work. We already have a share. And now we will get the share access because we want to check on the full access permissions. We now entered in the commandlet for get SMB share access, which is something we don't want to debug. That will be fine. We trust Microsoft. And we can see that it actually got that access permissions in here. And the cool thing about debugging like this is that it's all visible to you by just hovering over those kind of things. So that's really awesome. But the share is probably not in the desired state because we already know we tampered with it, right? So we're going to evaluate that full access permissions. So what we do here is we create an empty array, and then for each A in shareaccess.account, which does not exist because it's account name, so this is our next bug. We will end up with a null evaluation. Let's step through it. So you cannot call a method on a null-valued expression. So this is another bug in here. So now, again, we have a terminating exception because there's a fault in our logic. And because we have a terminating exception, set is not called to fix this. So we need to debug this as well. So again, let's enter that PS session. And I promise this is the last planted bug. So. Let's see where it is. So it was account name, I believe, I hope. And just for sake of time, let's disable the DSC debug and let's just run it. And as you can see, set is called correctly right now, so the comparison was okay. We didn't have null problem. If we look at the share access, we see, again, built-in administrators are the only ones who are allowed access to the share, so our resource is solid in this end. How are we on time? 15 minutes, right?
30 minutes.
30?
Ends at 10.
All right, cool. So, Microsoft introduced something really cool, really new. It's not in WMF5 RTM, right? But it's in TP4. It's in TP4. So, RTM as well, for the class-based resource debugging. I believe it was TP4 and Windows 10 in the insider preview.
Yes, insider.
A question about the code you wrote. I saw you had a lot of void statements before some list access.
Let's see. Where did you?
You are removing some.
When you remove the
You're
PS
removing bound parameters, I guess?
Oh, right, yeah. Let's see, where did it was in the set function, right? Yeah, okay, yeah.
Is this? I didn't really get the context here. Are we in a class?
No.
Are these functions generated from a class?
Okay, so what I do actually is the parameters, they collide with the parameter set for new SMB share. But because we're...
I'm getting the bound parameters.
All right.
It's just when you're in a class, you only have a return statement that returns stuff, and you don't have to do the void.
Yeah. So we don't want to pollute our output stream here. So what we're doing is voiding this out, or else we would have been returned a 1, I believe.
Yes.
So what essentially happens is when if PS bound parameters is array, sorry, is a hash table. When you call a remove on it, it returns you a success or failure.
that part. What I don't get, I don't understand.
I don't want to see it.
Are we in a function or in a class? I thought we made a class-based
No,
resource.
it's not
all
script.
function resource. This is script resource.
It's a mark-based resource.
Yes.
It's just null, but it's faster.
Well, I don't really know what's faster or not. But the thing here is, I don't want to pollute my output stream, so I'm voiding it out because I know it will be successful. It's fine.
Talking past each other.
Well, I think maybe a bit. Let's generate a class-based resource then, and talk about that. Yeah. Okay, cool. So I have some code here. It's a class-based DSC resource. It does nothing fancy. Does not actually do anything, but it will reverse a name I put in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a module out of it. It's called psconf.eu class. And I'm copying over that demo 9 ps1 in there, creating a manifest. So now we have a class-based resource module. And I'm going to copy that over to that nano box as well. We have the resource available, so we can generate a configuration. And the end result will be my name in reverse, so it's really just to demo. So we're again enabling the debug on that nano server, starting the DSC configuration. Again, the LCM is friendly enough to provide us with all the details we need to start that debugging. So as you can see, the process ID actually changed. So what happened was that the WMI-PRSRV, I believe it's the process hosting the stuff, right? Okay, it was recycled. So the LCM has spun up a new process. So we need to enter that other process. Okay.
You broke it.
I broke it. No, I didn't. I'm in there. So let's step a few times. This is something promised to me will be better in the future, but this is already pretty awesome. So we're now debugging a class-based resource. This was not possible before WMF5 RTM with a little bit of extra. So as you can see, we are now hitting the test method, and we're testing false. So we always will trigger set. So this is just for demo purposes, right? Stepping through it, hitting the return, doing it again. It's a script stop, right? It's actually a script calling the stuff. Okay. So we need to do this a couple of times. And now we hit the set method. And it's the same as with the script-based resource. We can enumerate the values here. But the difference being with a class-based resource is because it's a class, we cannot have the parameter names in there directly. We have to refer them through with this. This is the magic word. So let's step through. And we hit a little helper method here. And the helper method will have a name, eventually. Okay, it will have a name. And it will put it into a char array. It reverses out and joins it together as a string again. And then returns it to the set method. And you can see my name in reverse, so really awesome. If this is a bit slow for you and you are specifically ambitious to debug a certain piece of your code, then you can put in this line, wait debugger, and you can hit O instead of S to just go until you hit that wait debugger statement, and it will open just there.
Can you put breakpoints?
I don't believe breakpoints are currently supported, right?
Yes, you can put breakpoints in your function directly once you start debugging.
With classes? Okay.
Yes.
So learning while presenting. Awesome. And that's it for the demos. Let's see if we can get the presentation back. It crashed, I think. All right. So, to summarize, we have two types of resources. We have class-based resources, script-based resources. Class is less overhead. As you see, the code is more dense, more compact. Not a lot of code is reused. Or well, actually, it is all reused, and we don't have to duplicate it a lot. But it's WMF 5 Plus only, so you need to think about that. A script-based resource, more overhead. You see the same parameter set for every function, so you need to deal with that. But it's backwards. It's compatible WMF 4 up, so first iteration of DSC. If you want to contribute to DSC resources on GitHub, most of them, I believe all of them still.
Except the one that we ship in box, currently they are not.
Right, so if you want to contribute to something existing, it's probably script-based resource you're after, because all the existing ones are script-based and the two cannot be combined yet. Class and script.
The publicly available bits don't have that.
Right, so still current state. We have some debugging options. We can import the PSM1 file into our own PowerShell session. We need to use a lot of verbose outputs there to really know what's going on. So you need to be really out there and telling us what's going on. It runs on your own user credentials, and it's really good for unit testing. So if you're contributing on GitHub to the DSC resources, you have to create pester test, and this is the way to do the testing. Then we have the LCM debugging, so with invoke DSC resource or putting in a configuration. We can attach the debugger. It runs as system, unless you have specified the resource to run as another credential. And you can have the step-by-step tracking, and that's really awesome. And with that, that's the end of my session. So if I have questions. Hey, man.
Can you go back 2 slides?
2?
Yes. So it's a net, but a lot of times we say script-based resources versus class-based resources. They are mock-based resources versus class, because in both of them you are writing PowerShell script.
True, true. And both instantiate a sim class, right? So, okay. Anybody else? Then thank you.